If you wanna find me, yeah, I'm in the front row. Got my 2 tickets on me, I'm in the front row. It's the best place to be, yeah, I'm in the front row. Best place to be, yeah. If you wanna find me, yo, I'm in the front row. Got my 2 tickets on me, I'm in the front row. It's the best place to be, yeah, I'm in.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the In the Front Row YouTube channel. I am excited. I have a special guest joining me today, my good friend Blaine Spencer, who runs the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. Blaine, well, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm humbled right now to be on. It's great to see you. I know you've been a guest already on my podcast, The Final Whistle. So I'm really honored to be on In the Front Row. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, no problem, Blaine. We have a lot to get into because news broke out of the NBA today, and the NFL is in a very important time of year. But first, for our viewers, I want them to get to know your podcast, the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. Tell us all about it, what it's about, what you kind of run through every week.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Final Whistle Sports Podcast I actually started it out in 2019 as kind of like a fun way to talk sports with me and my friends, and it ended up actually turning into something bigger than I actually expected, honestly. So I picked it back up in late of 2020, especially during these times of COVID, and I thought, what's a better way to reach out to people and give some light to everyone's days? Let's talk sports. And I am passionate sports. I work in the sports journalism field. So what I do is now I broadcast twice a week on Tuesdays and Fridays. I have a bunch of co-hosts come on from all over the country. We talk NFL, we talk NBA, we talk college basketball. The list goes on. The whole point of the Final Whistle Sports Podcast was to generate an idea to be able to talk about every sports. So like NHL started today. I throw in some Premier League soccer, some Champions League soccer in there as well. It's just a great way to just talk sports in general. So, and I'm really humbled. We're doing interviews now. We're putting out sports betting content for that following that I have now. It's been a real blessing. So thank you again. So that's basically what the Final Whistle Sports Podcast is all about. Just to bring viewership and bring on a light of sports in a unique way.
And now you have merch. Are you selling the merch?
I am. We have just actually, so this is, you haven't seen this yet. So yeah.
No.
I started actually creating sweatshirts. So I did a little bit of in November, I did like a trial run to see like whether or not the logo would come out the way I would like it. So now I have 6 different designs that I've created, 3 of them using my original logo and 3 using a white logo on a general platform. So we've got it in black, a blue, a maroon, a cardinal red. So we have the regular logo in black and then a white and black as well. So it's really unique. I mean, I'm actually meeting with vendors right now to possibly expand that to do some hats, T-shirts, and more. So yeah, we're really trying to pick it up. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's been a blast.
Before we move on, where can we find the merch if we want to buy it?
Yeah, so right now I did a trial run. So right now I'm not doing merch at the moment.
Okay.
I did it through Custom Ink. I'm currently meeting with vendors this week, and I'm hopefully to have that stuff up and running within the next couple weeks. So I'm going to go full grand opening on merchandise hopefully in the next couple weeks.
Look out for it. We have a lot to get into here because I know obviously you're on a sports podcast. You love to follow everything in the sports world, which is great. Here at In the Front Row, we focus a lot on the NBA. We'll talk about the NFL later, but we focus a lot on the NBA. And big news happened as the day we were filming. So we definitely want to talk about it. It moved up in the show rundown. James Harden, who has been seeking a trade probably, it seems like a few years now, but really this past season really wanted out after the conclusion of the last season with the whole Russell Westbrook drama that we all know about. And today was the day, Blaine, that he was moved. James Harden is heading to Brooklyn to join his former teammate in Kevin Durant, as well as Kyrie Irving, to make a big 3 there. It was a big trade that broke the NBA world. It really put a lot of attention in Brooklyn, even though they already had a lot of attention with KD and Kyrie. But now they get James Harden. There's a lot to break down in this trade. So let's start with the James Harden part, obviously, because the Rockets involved the Pacers, a whole movement in the Eastern Conference. Your reaction to James Harden heading to Brooklyn?
I mean, it was inevitable, if you're being completely honest, especially after him coming out yesterday and the first time actually publicly saying, I do not want to be here. There's nothing more I can do. I want out of Houston. And you knew that his two front runners were Philadelphia and Brooklyn. And I think it was just time for the Houston just to get what they can at the moment. And they just shipped house, try to get as many assets as possible in for James Harden. And for Brooklyn, you gave away a lot. And we'll break that down, of course, like as you mentioned, but you gave away so much to land James Harden. And I'll give you a free pass this year, but if you don't have a championship within the next 2 years, this is going to become, especially in New York, that fan base is very critical immediately. If you're not going to have a championship in those first 2 years, they're going to start thinking about the Boston trade with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and they're going to think it's a bust immediately.
Yeah, and
Kevin Durant's going to be in control of a lot of that too, to get James Harden and Kyrie all on the same page. But yeah, Brooklyn's got to win ASAP. I think it was a necessary move. I think the Brooklyn Big Three is better than the Golden State Big Three now as well. I'm a Golden State guy. So
yes, you are. This was, they're going to have to, without Clay, that's going to be difficult. They need Klay Thompson back. But this is interesting to me for multiple reasons. Obviously, Brooklyn they were going for a championship when they added KD and Kyrie to the roster, and now they're adding James Harden. I don't know if I like the move necessarily. It's a difficult move for me to digest. You already have two scores there. I know Kyrie, all this drama has been coming out in the past few weeks with he was maskless at a family birthday party. Now he may have violated the protocols, and there's a lot of drama going on, and there's always drama. It seems like drama follows Kyrie Irving. But besides that, when he's on the court, he obviously can play. You have KD who can play. James Harden dribbles the ball a lot to me, and I don't know if that's going to mesh well in Brooklyn. You already have Kyrie who wants to score, who could be considered or is a point guard. You already have KD who James Harden did play with, but I think you gave up a little bit too much. And I just don't necessarily know if the Brooklyn Big Three is going to mesh. You already had two premier scorers. I don't know why you necessarily had to add a third. Obviously, a talent like James Harden is hard to come by, but that's regular season. We've always had questions about James Harden in the postseason if he can play, and now he's really going to be put to the test and have a lot of pressure. But if regular season Houston can play, obviously the questions in the postseason, he's going to be with KD, he's going to be with Kyrie. They're going to be the overwhelming favorites in the East now, you have to say. Philadelphia is there, his other, like you said, possible destination with Doc Rivers. But do you like the move? I don't know if I'm necessarily a big fan of it. Do you think they're going to mesh in Brooklyn?
That's a great question, because I think that is so up in the air at the moment, especially when you have three ball-dominant players now that are going to be on the court at the same time. And, you're going to have probably Joe Harris there as your spot-up shooter there. But still, how's this going to work? You have Steve Nash, probably one of the greatest passers, if not the greatest passer to play the game at point guard. Is he going to be able to bring in that team mentality? So for me, I think it'll at least work in the Eastern Conference, because in my opinion, and I think you'll agree here, that the Eastern Conference is a little bit more down than the West. I think the West is a lot more competitive, so that'll help them in the Eastern Conference to compete. I don't know if it'll win them a championship. Especially you have all the shenanigans with Kyrie Irving. Again, he came out, supposedly there were reports today that he actually didn't want the Steve Nash hire, that everyone thought that he had him and KD had support on that. And then again, you have James Harden. It looks like at the moment he's out of shape. Will he get into shape? Will he go out? Will he still have the same mentality that he had in Houston, going out and then coming back and playing that he did in New York? It's going to be really intriguing. So for me at the moment, I would say flip of a coin. Flip of a coin. I can't really tell you. I think it'll definitely have them in the Eastern Conference Finals, just because of the three's talent alone will get them there. Will it get them to a championship? Who knows? But
I don't know. It's going to be difficult. I want to try to recap, because it was a huge trade that involved four teams. It involved the Nets, Houston, the Pacers, and the Cavaliers. So it was kind of a blockbuster trade, but also a lot of moving pieces. the Nets originally sent a package to Houston that included multiple players and draft picks and Karis LeVert, who then was traded to the Pacers for Victor Oladipo. So Oladipo is now moved. I know he's been wanting out of Indiana. Houston receives 3 unprotected first-round draft picks in the years 2022, 2024, and 2026, plus possible swaps in 4 years. It's a lot moving. There's a lot of draft picks and moving pieces. Who do you think got the best end of the deal? Was it Brooklyn or was it possibly someone else?
I mean, personally, I think Brooklyn actually finished third in this deal. I would actually put definitely the Houston Rockets at 1. I think they had a couple moves that were absolute slam dunks. And then again, the Pacers. I think the Pacers made a sneaky move to be able to land Karis LeVert. I really do. And so let's just break it down. That, from my opinion, Houston, you get Oladipo, Dante Exum, you get Kurucs again as well. You get 3 first-rounders, 3 of them. Then you get 4 of those as to be another 4 of first-round swaps. Like, that's absurd. That's unheard of in the NBA. It's the first time ever that so many picks that a team has landed just off of one trade alone. Mm-hmm. And I think, even though I think, Victor Oladipo wanted out of Indiana, but I think that plugging him in, he is a better defender. He is a high-energy guy, and he will rally around John Wall. That backcourt is going to be legit because those two have motors that are at 110. So I think Houston's going to be really surprised with what they got, and they're going to be really pleased. I know draft picks, especially in the NBA, unless you have a top just if you don't have a top 10 pick, you don't know what you're going to get, right? Yeah. So I think that's okay. But again, the Pacers, I think they got second over Brooklyn because Karis LeVert is a young player. Indiana's a very young team, and they're going to be able to grow together. And Indiana's known for making some noise in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. They may not win the first round or that matchup, but they're competitive every game. They're forcing 6 or 7 games into a series. And Karis LeVert's going to be able to shine with Sabonis and Miles Turner, which I think Oladipo was kind of, especially coming off the injury, he was kind of shying away from the spotlight a little bit. And I think he'll be able to enjoy being the second guy in Houston behind John Wall. So I would have to say Houston and Indiana personally actually beat Brooklyn there in these deals.
I agree with you. The draft picks obviously are monumental, but if you look at Victor Oladipo, I think his move to Houston is, obviously people are going to talk about the James Harden part and how he went to Brooklyn, but I think it's an underrated move for Houston to get Victor Oladipo. If you look back at his seasons in Indiana when they got to the playoffs, I know you said they didn't make a lot of noise. It was because he didn't have a lot of surrounding talent. How many All-Stars did they put around that man besides him? You can't think of a lot, if any.
Bonus.
And that's you can think of one. And he's still, Nate McMillan and I went on In the Front Row a while ago when he was fired and said he didn't deserve to be fired with the amount of talent, or lack thereof, I should say, of talent. Him still getting, I know the Eastern Conference is a weaker conference than the Western Conference is a general consensus, but him still getting his team, I believe they were a 4 seed last year in the bubble when they played Miami, to the playoffs without Oladipo, who was injured. I thought he was a terrific coach. I thought Oladipo was talented. If he had maybe another superstar and then a possibly third player, I think Indiana could have made more noise, but I think he might become the number 1 in Houston. I know John Wall is down there and having a terrific season and was moved from the Wizards. Bradley Beal has to be thinking, what do I have to do to get out of Washington? But that's a whole nother topic. But I think he could sneak and be the number 1 option in Houston. He adds a scoring option, like he said. He adds defense to Houston, and it makes Houston more of a competitor now in the Western Conference because they have more chemistry. I think, obviously, all the James Harden drama all season, he's wanting to be traded. That's been the dominating headline of their season. Now I think they can kind of take a deep breath, kind of relax a little bit, and just not worry now that James Harden is moved. It's a lot to discuss, obviously. And again, James Harden moved to Brooklyn in a 4-team trade that involves a lot of movement in the Western and Eastern Conference. It really could impact the landscape of the NBA. Brooklyn now, in many people's opinions, becomes a heavy favorite in the Eastern Conference with a big 3. The Western Conference, I don't know who's not going to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. It's a loaded conference. We do have to move on, though, Blaine. We could talk about the NBA all day, but we have the NFL to discuss. So we're going to discuss that coming up. It's playoff time, and we are excited. So, guys, stay tuned. We'll be back after this short break.
If you wanna find me, yeah, I'm in the front row. If you wanna find me, yo, I'm in the front row. Got 2 tickets on me, I'm in the front row. The best place to be, yeah, I'm in the front row. So what's colder than ice and even hotter than a flame? I be in the front row, chilling at a boogie.
Welcome back to the In the Front Row YouTube channel. I am honored to have my guest, Blaine Spencer from the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. And I have another guest joining me, my brother Dustin, who I guess we'll call him analyst because he comes on pretty regularly on the channel, is back because it is NFL time, guys. That's what we are going to move on and discuss because it was a busy NFL weekend in the playoffs, the wild card weekend. Honestly, I don't even know where to start. There were so many games. We had the Browns, the Steelers that people weren't expecting to blow out. We had the Ravens beat the Titans. We had the Packers advance. There's so many games, so many moving parts to talk about. So, Blaine, we'll start with you, I guess. What was your biggest headline from Wild Card Weekend?
For me, most certainly, it was how the Cleveland Browns pulled off, hands down, the upset of the weekend. You have literally, I couldn't even tell you who was coaching that game. I really couldn't. With Stefanski out, you also had receivers out. I'm just being honest. Your special teams coordinator was your head coach. It was really a fascinating display. And you could honestly see how downhill it went for Pittsburgh. It was almost like an omen that was being dropped with the first snap going over Big Ben's head and then recovering it in the end zone by Carl Joseph for the first touchdown. And then it was nothing short of a blowout after that, 28-0 after the first. It was nothing short of pretentious, in my opinion. And then, Pittsburgh did make a run there late to cut it to like 2 scores. But still, Big Ben, 4 turnovers, 5 turnovers in total for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Cleveland, they didn't turn the ball over. Stefanski had a perfect game plan set up. And they had just played Pittsburgh the week before, so you were kind of wondering what was going to happen, if Cleveland was going to show up or if they were going to kind of lay an egg, especially with Mason Rudolph playing the week before. But I have to give my kudos to Cleveland. First win since 95 in the playoffs, first road win since the late 60s. So kudos to Cleveland. That was definitely my storyline without question.
Dustin, was that your storyline, the biggest headline of the Wild Card Weekend? I'm going to unfortunately say no, just because I expected it. I just don't think Pittsburgh it was an overrated 11-0 start, and then, they were a 1-5 football team, as Rex Ryan said down the stretch. I'm going to stick to my hometown in the sweatshirt I have on. I'm going to stick to the Baltimore Ravens. And there's 2 takeaways from this game. First thing is Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson single-handedly won them that game on the offensive side of the ball. But the scary part is I don't think Lamar has reached his playoff potential yet. I think that was a pretty subpar to above average game. I don't think he's in the excellent or the great category yet. He was very hesitant in the first half. And that interception he missed by, 8 yards down the field. So I think Lamar had a very slow start, but obviously was able to elevate to where he wanted to get to. But I think he has a lot more of a ceiling to get to. I think Lamar can be even better than he was when they traveled down to Nashville and played in Tennessee. Second takeaway from the game for me would be the Ravens defense. If you don't say the Ravens defense is the best in the NFL, I don't know where you can go because they have the best secondary in the NFL. They have Marcus Peters, who has like 11 more interceptions than anybody in the last 4 to 5 years or whatever it is. And so I'm excited to see the Ravens defense because they're going to need it against Josh Allen.
I got a quick question for you, Dustin. What did you think? What was your impersonation of the logo? What did you think? The logo interpretation with Tennessee. What happened there?
I loved it, to be honest, because instead of like Juju dancing on the logo for no reason and not earning any respect in the NFL yet, the Ravens actually earned respect to go stand and dance on the logo instead of just doing it. Like even before the Ravens game with Tennessee, they didn't win the game yet. So I like how the Ravens did it after. Like they played well and then they did it. I loved it. Every moment of it. I do want to make a correction really quickly. I know I said the Packers advanced. I meant to say the Bills. The Packers obviously didn't play this weekend with their first round bye.
Don't worry.
Yeah, make that correction for everybody so people don't look like crazy. touching the Browns storyline really quickly before I move into my biggest headline. Like Dustin, I told Dustin earlier in the week, earlier in the season, I didn't think Pittsburgh was going to win a playoff game, but I also didn't think Cleveland was going to win a playoff game. So when they got matched up, it was a little confusing for me. I think I have to give my hats off and kudos to Cleveland, though. If you're missing your head coach, you're missing a few players due to COVID, and also you have to try. I know the fans aren't there this season, but you have to travel on the road to go play. It's impressive that you come out and play that strong of a game. They're going to have a difficult task this week that we'll get into later, and maybe if they could pull the upset with Stefanski coming back. But it was interesting. On the Ravens, I'm happy that Lamar Jackson erased the narrative of he can't win the big game, because he didn't win in his first 2 seasons in the playoff games when he took over midseason, his rookie season, and then played a full season and had an impressive regular season last season, and then went into the playoffs. And he didn't have a terrible game, but they still lost. He's lost all those games to Kansas City. He can't beat a Big Ben Pittsburgh team. There's so many narratives that he was facing. He couldn't win the big game. I felt it's a relief for him to come out and win a wild card game. On the logo, I don't think I'm as impressed as other people. I thought it was, cool and everything, but I don't know. I just think like the game was sealed at that point when were they the team that stepped on the logo before last year?
Tennessee did it in the regular season game.
And then only your head coach comes out, and then all of a sudden when you win a game, I don't know. I just think
because you win in the playoffs, man.
Yeah, but I just think I don't know. I think they should have done it. Maybe I know it's your own logo and it. But they were on the road. I think maybe you should have done it in the beginning of the game to kind of make a statement. That's not obviously what we're talking about here. But I don't know. I didn't love it as much as other people did.
Yeah.
My storyline, I would say, out of Wild Card Weekend, and this is a random one, I guess, since you guys talked about the Browns, Steelers, and the Ravens, I'm going to stick in the AFC. I'm going to stick with the Buffalo Bills. And I think my storyline is it was a close game. I honestly was shocked that it would come down to that close a game. I know it was Josh Allen's first playoff game, but it shows me are they a little nervous to play? Obviously, I wasn't impressed with Indianapolis during the course of the regular season. I thought I'm saying the wrong teams here. I thought the Bills would have an easy task heading in their home, and I understand fans would have a much bigger part and a much bigger influence in football when you can't hear it's a whole different story. But I thought they were going to win a little bit more comfortably. It came down literally to the final play, and they've had such a hot streak entering the playoffs, them and the Ravens have. I just want to see, and now obviously they both are going to play each other, and we'll see who will advance. But I don't know, was it concerning to you that the Bills won by that close of a margin and down to the final play?
I mean, personally, I actually predicted it was only going to be a field goal game on my podcast. We had Buffalo. We had Buffalo winning with Indianapolis covering that 6.5 easily. We thought this was the opportunity, and I think the Colts realized, especially for Phillip Rivers, this was his best chance to make a run at a AFC championship or potentially a Super Bowl appearance. So we thought if Phillip Rivers could limit the mistakes, Indianapolis is going to be right there. And personally, I don't know what you guys think, but I think the Colts technically lost the game and Buffalo didn't really win the game. They made the two crucial red zone mistakes.
Yeah,
I didn't goal from the 5, and then you doink a field goal from 30 yards out. That's 6 points. The spread of the game was 3.
I didn't get the screen pass at the end either. I understand you're trying to gain into field goal range, but I thought they needed to throw the ball down the field. You kind of set Phillip Rivers up for a miracle. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what I think with the Bills is, Cole Beasley's banged up, which is like kind of Josh Allen's safety blanket. I'm not saying he's better than Stephon Diggs. I'm saying he's like kind of a safety blanket receiver, like a slot receiver that's always going to win the matchup against a linebacker or a safety, whoever he's playing. And, I mean, I'm not too concerned because the Colts were on and off this season because when Phillip Rivers brought it, and he's inconsistent, obviously, he's been like that his whole career. But when he brought it, the Colts were a very competitive team this season. And I think, obviously, in the playoffs, it's obviously ratcheted up a little bit. Also, it still proves Stephon Diggs is a bad man. He didn't have any playoff jitters. I know he's been in the playoffs with the Vikings before. But I'm not too concerned because the Colts are a tough team. They have a really good defense and they can run the ball, and that's the playoff formula. So, not too concerned, to be honest. But
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I thought after their impressive regular season finale against a team that
come on, the Dolphins have a quarterback who averaged 90 yards a game. Get out of here.
I'm just saying after their impressive regular season finale, they
make it happen.
Thank
you, my man.
We'll talk about that in a little bit if we have time, guys. I want to move on to this weekend because it is now the divisional round. 8 teams remain competing for the Super Bowl, and I want to start with the Browns and the Chiefs because Patrick Mahomes is back in playoff action. We saw what he did last season, comeback victory after another, leading his team to the Super Bowl. Blaine, we'll start with you. Do the Browns have any chance to upset Kansas City?
I mean, it's very small. I'll give him that much. Personally, I mean, they had their fairy tale ending already. They were able to win a playoff game. They made the playoffs. They've done everything they've checked every box what they were trying to do. And I mean, the only formula that I can see is, of course, you keep the ball away from Patrick Mahomes. You're going to have at least 2 to 3 drives that you're taking up 6 minutes plus of the clock, and you're scoring touchdowns, and you're holding them to field goals. And the one thing that you do have going for you is that Patrick Mahomes has not played in 3 weeks now, right? He took off the week 17 and he had the bye. So he hasn't played in 3 weeks, and he hasn't played well in those last 4 games leading up to it. So there still is a chance. I mean, you're going to have to play perfect, but I would give them a very slim chance. I would take Kansas City in a heartbeat to win, but
Dustin?
Not at all. I think Patrick Mahomes is the baddest man on the planet when it comes to the NFL. I think and their offense is obviously with Andy Reid calling the shots, but you can not play Patrick Mahomes for 5 years, and I would still take him if they're playing the Super Bowl 5 years from now. He's the baddest man on the planet. The one thing I wanted to discuss, and I'm interested to hear your guys' opinions, and I guess I'll kind of leave the floor open. I think Baker Mayfield is getting a lot of hype for no reason. He's still not very proven to me. And also, I was thinking about this the other day because obviously Odell's been out for the year. What happens when Odell comes back next season? Do you trade him in the offseason because him and Baker don't have that chemistry? But if you're the Browns, if you're sitting there, are you going to hold on to Baker, who's to me maybe an average quarterback and obviously not living up to the expectations of the number 1 pick? Or do you say, hey, we're going to find another guy because we have a lot of talented weapons? And because Baker's like a system guy, like everything has to be right for him. So do you trust Odell more coming off an injury, or do you kind of leave the door open for Baker and trade Odell? What are you doing if you're in Cleveland? And I don't think they have any chance to win the game, by the way. I'm just asking.
I think it's going to be a difficult task this week to begin with. I guess the first question I asked. I think Patrick Mahomes is too good. I don't think Cleveland's defense is good. I understand they're going to get Denzel Ward back, and they're going to get Yeah. No, I'm just saying they're going to get a few key pieces back is what I'm saying. But I think it's a tall task. That's an interesting question to me because I think Baker Mayfield, because we even saw way back in the regular season when they played the Ravens at home, and he had everyone was a little overhyping, like they didn't win the game. And everyone was like, oh, did you see Baker Mayfield? The Browns really put up a good fight. And I think
they lost.
in the NFL, it's win now so heavily that I think it was a little overhyped at that point. For our number 1 pick, I think obviously the expectations are higher. And I think Baker Mayfield, and I hear people say this, there's certain quarterbacks who can go to any team and elevate the team completely. I don't think Baker Mayfield is one of those quarterbacks. I think he's a quarterback that needs a run game behind him, needs talent at the wide receiver position to do well. Yeah. He's more of if the system fits him, he's going to play well. And I think you have to give him his credit. He's gone in and he's won the games he needs to accept against the Jets, but they still made the playoffs and they, won their opening week game traveling to a division rival who people kept saying the narrative of, oh, are they going to beat the Steelers? And I understand they beat them the week before, but remember, Big Ben didn't play. So with Big Ben coming back, you have to give him his kudos for winning the game. And as a quarterback, I
Mhm.
know you tell me all the time, Dustin, that not everything's about stats. It's about if you can go in and win those games that you need to win. With the Odell question, I think Cleveland should trade him because I think
Mhm.
you've seen. You have to say Baker Mayfield's play has elevated with Odell Beckham getting injured, and I don't think it has anything to do with Odell Beckham. I think he's one of the most, or probably the most talented receiver I've seen in the past 5 or 10 years. The stats, I say this all the time, the stats don't back it up, but I think he is. I
Me
just
too.
think you should move him, and I think the Ravens should keep their phones open. Blaine, what do you think about that question?
I mean, you guys pretty much nailed it on the head. I mean, for me personally, well, think about it. Kevin Stefanski came from Minnesota. He just reminds me of a little bit better version of Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. It's the exact same game plan. He needs the play action to be successful. If he gets the run game working, he's a very accurate passer. It's that simple. He's a little bit more mobile, so he can use his legs a little bit more, which gives him a little bit more versatility than Kirk Cousins. But that was the whole reason I think Kevin Stefanski was brought in, because they know Kirk Cousins was able to take them to the playoffs. If you get a good running game, you have a two-headed monster in Chubb and Hunt, so you know you're going to be able to run the ball. And then being able to just use the play action, force Baker into half the field reads. He doesn't have to read the whole field. And if on that half of the field he doesn't like it, you take off. You get what you can. As for Odell, I would have to say do not trade him.
Oh, really?
I wouldn't trade him because you can't let a player with that kind of talent walk out of the building. I know they've made the playoffs now and they started to really click as an offense with him out. But the kid's a freak of nature. Mm-hmm. And if he's ever healthy and if you can get him the ball, he has, in my opinion, the best hands and he's got the most upside at the wide receiver position. And I know he's going to be out again probably for all of next year, but you got to give him a shot. I think it'll work. You just need them to figure it out. So I wouldn't trade Odell at the moment. Plus, you're not going to get the value you want for him anymore with this coming off of the injury. So I would give it one more opportunity.
I think the Giants should have never moved him. I agree with the point. Talent like that, you can't let walk out of the building. We have to move on because obviously.
Can I just say one more thing? Because I just think this is interesting too. If you look at Baker and Lamar, they're in the same draft class, and people are like acting like Lamar Jackson's the number one pick. He was 0-2 in the playoffs and couldn't win a big game. And people forget he was the 5th quarterback taken, and Baker was the 1st quarterback taken. And it seems like he doesn't have those expectations. But keep going.
Yeah, but that's also
quarterback of that class.
No, but that's also because you're going to
that's
the Ravens
debatable.
versus you're going to the Ravens instead of the Browns. The Ravens are a franchise that are known. I know you're going to say they weren't great the year before and they weren't the Super Bowl champion. Yeah, but also still John Harbaugh has had successful year after successful year. That's why we have to move on to the next game.
But also
we have to move on to the.
No, but Baker has a more talented offense and weapons around him than Lamar does. But go ahead.
Okay. The fake producers are in my ear. We have to move on to the next game.
I'm sorry, producers.
We're going to stick in the AFC with the Ravens and the Bills. Speaking of them, it's an interesting matchup between Buffalo, who I thought was a little bit concerning. I understand Indianapolis is inconsistent, and that's how Philip Rivers plays. And the Ravens, who finally Lamar Jackson got over that hump. Guys, your keys and prediction. Can the Ravens continue their journey, or will Buffalo win at home? Who wants the floor?
Blaine, go ahead. You can go.
All right, I'll take it. I mean, this game for me could go either ways. The game could be either 10-3 or 41-38. Like that's no, I'm serious. Like it's either going to be high scoring or it's going to be defense rolls because both of these teams are built the same way. You have speed on the outside of wide receiver. You got more of power at the running back. You have two quarterbacks that can run and throw the football. One's more of a power runner, and then Lamar Jackson's just the best athlete on the field. For me personally, I'm gonna have to say that Buffalo's gonna find a way. I think Lamar is gonna be the best player out in the field, but I think Josh Allen's gonna be the best quarterback on the field. So I think that's what's gonna come down to. I think Lamar Jackson's gonna use his legs like a maniac, and he's going to showcase his ability. But I think what Josh Allen has shown this year is that if it weren't for Aaron Rodgers, he'd be the MVP. That's
Yeah,
how
I'm
good of
Roy
a
Aaron.
year he's had, in my opinion. He's my runner-up
course,
in the
Dylan.
MVP conversation.
Yeah, I think keep in mind that weather is going to be a huge key in this game. I
It'll be
think
snowing.
it's probably going to snow in Buffalo. And we saw the Ravens play a bad weather game earlier in the year when they traveled to New England, and they didn't play well. And it was a New England team that they probably should have beat. I understand. I think at that time they had a few key COVID related reserves players that were out. But I think I've been rolling and telling people that the Ravens are going to make the Super Bowl this year. So I'm just going to continue with that prediction. And I think they will go into Buffalo, because you have to think, I know there's this narrative that Baltimore, if they get behind, they're not going to play well. Obviously, last week they showed you they can come from behind after trailing in Tennessee and coming back. I think the bad weather game might work in their advantage because I said they didn't play well, so it seems hypocritical. They didn't play well when it was New England, but I think now Lamar Jackson kind of has a bad weather game under his belt. They're a heavy run offense, which obviously it's difficult to throw in bad weather, except if you're Aaron Rodgers, he can throw in anything. But I think Josh Allen's used to the weather, but will that impact his down the field game to Stephon Diggs and throwing down the field? And if it comes to they just have to run the ball and you look at that, I think the Ravens, first of all, have a better defense than Buffalo, and I think they have enough or probably the best run game in football. I can't think of a team who's better. And I think that will work out in their advantage. I think Lamar Jackson, like you said, is going to be the best athlete on the field. Even in the Tennessee game, when their offense wasn't rolling, he made that big run to kind of get the momentum and kind of get the offense going and then playing into the second half and being able to win that game. So I'll pass it to you, Dustin. But I think Lamar Jackson is going to be a huge key in this game. And he has some confidence now. You have to think he has some confidence now. And if it comes down to a field goal, you always trust Justin Tucker.
You always trust the boy, Justin Tucker. What I was saying earlier about Lamar, I think Lamar was very hesitant in the first half against Tennessee. I think, which is a scary thought, Lamar can even be in like more of attack mode than he already is if he hits the holes a little faster than he did in the first half. And obviously that throw was awful down the field to Miles Boykin and missed by like 8 yards. It was supposed to be on the outside shoulder. So I think Lamar can play even better than he did last week, which is scary. If you think about Buffalo offensively, their run game is a little suspect, especially with Zach Moss out now, who was their power back in the backfield. Devin Singletary, he was on my fantasy team, so I would know this. He had a very down year. I was expecting a lot bigger things from Devin Singletary, and he's more of a receiving back anyway. So where does Buffalo go with the run game? And people were talking about last week, obviously the Ravens facing a completely different team with a run-first team. You can look at Buffalo and think they're a little more of a pass-first team, just with the injuries and everything going on. And the Ravens' strength of their defense, to me, they have a strength up front, but their secondary is just a bunch of ball hogs with Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters in the back end. So I think the matchup actually bodes really well for the Ravens. And Lamar is going to be the best athlete on the field. And I'm not going to say they're going to the Super Bowl like Dylan. I think it's a little crazy. But I think they do go into Buffalo. And the Ravens get off the bus getting 200 rushing yards. Can we just say that? They get off the bus, book them for 200. And if they get more, great. And in a snow-type game, the running the ball is very important. So I think the Ravens have the advantage there. And I would take them to play, I guess I'll say Kansas City, but we can,
This was definitely Buffalo's worst case scenario.
100%.
Was getting Baltimore. I could tell you right now, as people that I know that my Buffalo following, they were shooting me stuff that they were praying for Pittsburgh to pull off a miracle in that third quarter. I'm telling you. They were like, they've already played Pittsburgh. They know Pittsburgh can't do anything. They were like, beat them come again, on.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
but
guys,
I agree. Devontae Freeman was just signed to the practice squad. So watch him be a very, very sneaky play this week for them this weekend too.
Yeah, he was. But
I still respect Josh Allen a lot. I know I've been hyping him all season long, and he was one of my shout-outs earlier on In the Front Row. But I just think the weather, I think the Ravens played bad in New England, but never count out Bill Belichick. There's always a shot you're going to reach to the Patriots no matter who's under center. Yeah. So I think, not saying Sean McDermott is a bad coach. I'm just saying it's Bill Belichick. There's obviously Sean McDermott's a terrific coach, and what he's done and kind of turned Buffalo around is impressive. Guys, I do want to get to the Deshaun Watson news, so I want quick predictions out of the NFC. because I do want to talk about Deshaun Watson. The Rams and the Packers, just a quick prediction and kind of analysis. So we'll start with you, Dustin, just quickly.
Oh, me. I would say Green Bay wins this game. You have a warm weather team going to Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers is obviously the MVP and probably having the best year of his career, which is scary to say with my boy Devontae Adams. So I would take Green Bay.
Blaine?
Yeah, I mean, there's enough said that Jared Goff's playing with a broken thumb, and you could tell. And he somehow outplayed Russell Wilson last week, and he will not outplay Aaron Rodgers. Enough said.
Yeah, it comes down to the quarterback matchup. I obviously am on the Packers. I've been on them all. Aaron Rodgers. I'm always with my man Aaron Rodgers. I think it's when Green Bay clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC, they clinched their way to the Super Bowl. Nobody's going to go into Green Bay and beat them at Lambeau Field. Fans, no fans, it doesn't matter. The conditions, Aaron Rodgers knows how to play. Green Bay, book Green Bay to the Super Bowl. It's in Florida this year, right? Give Aaron Rodgers a ticket. I'm picking the Packers. The other game is a divisional matchup between the Buccaneers and the Saints. The Buccaneers, a tough game with the Washington football team last week. The Saints, a really ugly game on Nickelodeon that people were raving about on Twitter.
Slime, baby, slime.
Yeah. They beat the Bears. The Bears, interesting news coming out today. Matt Nagy and the GM will be back for another season.
That's
guys,
stupid.
Quick prediction between the Buccaneers and the Saints.
Go ahead.
Go first. Oh, yeah, everyone's
Me?
Dustin, go. Yeah.
I'll take the Saints. I don't know. I just don't like when I watch the Buccaneers play. I just think their scheme is terrible. I think Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich have lost their mind this year. I used to respect Byron Leftwich a lot, and I was like, you should give him a head coaching job. But I don't know what their scheme looks like this year. It's pretty bad. And obviously the Buccaneers defense can't stop a parked car, as Bradley Beal would say. So I like the explosive Saints offense with Michael Thomas back. And the Saints, if you want to make an argument for the best defense in the league, the Saints are definitely up there with the Ravens. They're great at all 3 phases, especially with Marshawn Lattimore in the back end. So I'll take the Saints for the 3rd time.
Blaine, your prediction?
I'm going out on a limb. Give me Tampa Bay.
Ooh.
I really am. I think this for them. This is their Super Bowl. Like, you've been embarrassed twice now by these guys. And it's so hard to beat a team, let alone twice. You're going to have to try and beat them 3 times now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just taking the numbers. I mean, I think Tom Brady realized they figured out the game plan in these past 4 or 5 games. Yeah, were they not playing the best competition? Yes. But I think they figured out how they're going to be able to attack New Orleans with those short passes. Antonio Brown has finally come into his own with this squad. And him working that intermediate range where you really didn't have anybody because you had Mike Evans down the field and Chris Godwin was more working those bubble screens and slant passes. You now have an intermediate threat. I think they'll figure it out. I mean, and defensively speaking, Tampa Bay has the best defense. Potentially, based on their potential, they could easily go in and shut New Orleans down based off of how their depth. Devin White potentially is going to be back this week. So,
can't guard anybody. He only protects the run.
I don't know. I'm going out on a limb. Give me the Buccaneers. Give me the older man that is Tom Brady than the older Drew Brees.
I think Antonio Brown shouldn't be in the NFL. That's a whole other conversation.
Facts.
I think I have to go with the Saints here. I have to go with the home team. I think there's questions with the Buccaneers. I get it's a win now season, and obviously when they signed Tom Brady, they obviously signed him to win the Super Bowl, bring wins to that franchise, and I think they should have kept Jameis Winston, but that's a whole other conversation.
Oh my God, Dylan, don't say that.
I like the Saints. I like Drew Brees. I understand people are still questioning, if he's a little too old, if he can throw the ball. Kamara, I know he's had issues with COVID. He's going to play this week, though, correct? I think he's going to return this week. So that's huge to get someone out of the backfield. And like Dustin said, that defense, I think they've given Tom Brady issues this year. And let's keep in mind that the Buccaneers played the Panthers and the Falcons 4 times this year. I mean, I understand that. And then their first playoff matchup was against a Washington football team who doesn't have a name yet. So I think you kind of have to take it with grain of salt. Washington did put up one heck of a fight. But I guess we'll see, guys, the NFL big matchups this weekend. I know we're running out of time. We're running long here, but I do want to get to the Deshaun Watson news because it's been circulating recently. The Texans brought in a new GM. They obviously didn't take Deshaun Watson's advice, so it started turmoil. Andre Johnson even came out and said that the Texans are basically ruining, or they know how to ruin people's careers. It's been a lot to discuss. I know he wanted Eric Bieniemy in the consideration for a head coach, and they didn't interview him.
Interviewing him now.
They
Yeah,
interviewed him.
but-
Sorry, they interviewed him now.
No, but they didn't. They didn't interview him at first, and then now it's more of a sympathy interview for to try to keep your quarterback. A lot of problems in Houston. Houston, we have a problem. Blaine, should Deshaun Watson get out of Houston, and where should he go?
I mean, I think he needs to get out. I mean, they will not move him until, like, we've talked earlier with the James Harden situation, he needs to blatantly come out and say that he wants to leave. Otherwise, they will not move him. For me, I know we were joking about Miami, but I have this. I am all in on the San Francisco 49ers.
Ooh,
I really
that's a good
am.
one.
If you put him with probably the greatest play caller in the NFL, that is Kyle Shanahan, you have a lethal running attack. And then if you just get a couple pieces back on defense, because they were so injured all year, San Francisco, and they were never healthy. Just getting them back to health makes them an instant contender. Add Deshaun Watson, you're right back in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
So
Dustin,
I'm all in on San Francisco.
Go ahead.
I would say Deshaun Watson needs to get out of Houston. When a quiet man speaks like Andre Johnson, you listen. So I just want to say that when a quiet man speaks, you do listen, because he didn't speak that much as a player, and now he's saying something about it. And I do agree. I think he needs to actually be like James Harden and make it as difficult and as obvious as possible, for the way to get out. I would pick Miami. I do like the San Fran. I think it's a good one. I like Kyle Shanahan, but Kyle Shanahan in the playoffs, we've seen him crack under pressure too many times. I think Brian Flores, and I'm just going to say this, Brian Flores is a top 5 coach in the NFL currently. I'm not saying resume, obviously he doesn't have a long enough resume to do that, but he's a top 5 coach in the NFL currently. He's never had, and obviously a quarterback position is most important. Tua, I think Tua is way overrated. I think Brian Flores has done a great job with that team. So I would say trade for Deshaun Watson, and they have the weapons to do it. They have the 3rd and the 18th pick this season, and obviously they're going to have to trade more. And sign Allen Robinson. Just trade for Deshaun Watson. You have the capital. Sign Allen Robinson, because they do need a number 1 guy down there, and Allen Robinson is a number 1 guy if you get him the right quarterback. And we all know what Miami's defense is. They could, besides the Ravens, they could have the 2 best corners in the league. Xavier Howard is definitely in consideration for that, besides Jalen Ramsey. But, so that's what I say. Go to Miami and then get Allen Robinson as a receiver, and you'll be looking good down in Miami.
It's interesting. I think there's about 30 or I would say 95% of the league that needs to be on the phone trying to get this man to the team. I don't care who, unless you got like Aaron Rodgers or somebody at quarterback or Patrick Mahomes, I think you should be calling. It's difficult for me. I think there's a lot of play. At first, I think he should get out of Houston. I think it's toxic when you have J.J. Watt saying, "Oh, we wasted one of your prime years." When you have a quiet player coming out who, didn't really speak or isn't like that big media personality saying that Houston's ruining careers. It all started with the Bill O'Brien hire, who apparently is heading to Alabama as an offensive coordinator. I don't know if you guys heard that. I did not hear that. There's a deal on the table, or I think it was him. They're going to hire somebody too because obviously Sarkisian left. But I think, and then giving him GM powers and then trading away DeAndre Hopkins and not even telling, it's toxic. I know I told Dustin earlier in the week I wasn't sold, but the more I think about it, I'm sold on San Fran. I think Kyle Shanahan is invested in Jimmy G, which could be an issue.
Isn't he back in New England?
Yeah, I don't know if Jimmy G, is that franchise quarterback you're looking for. Like Blaine said, they faced a lot of injuries. Preseason, they were my pick to go back to the Super Bowl. And I think, obviously, they lost Bosa, they lost places on the defensive end. Jimmy G's been hurt. But I like him in San Fran. You have a lot of weapons there. You have a strong running game to balance it. And I understand you said Kyle Shanahan kind of collapsed in the Super Bowl and he hasn't had his greatest. But look, Deshaun Watson versus Matt Ryan or Jimmy G, I'm taking Deshaun Watson, and I think he could possibly get to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. Guys, we have to wrap it up here. on In the Front Row. Dustin, thanks for coming on to talk NFL. Blaine, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you again soon. Go ahead and tell the people where to follow you so they know. I'll put the links in the description.
Absolutely. So you can check out the Final Whistle Sports Podcast. You can follow that on YouTube, Instagram. The Instagram is thefinal.whistle. Facebook, Final Whistle Sports Pod. And I don't have a Twitter at the moment, but my personal Twitter handle is Blaine Spencer 2. That's where I post all my Final Whistle content on there as well. It was a pleasure to be on. Thank you for having me on, guys.
No, we'll have to have you back on very soon. Love talking to you and debating sports with you, and I'll have to come back on soon as well. We'll have to make this a thing. Guys, we have to, like I said, wrap it up. Follow us at In the Front Row LA on Instagram and Twitter, and our YouTube In the Front Row. I know Fredo's launched a new show, so go ahead and check it out. This week he is talking about James Harden, and I want to hear his opinion on it.
Oh,
guys,
I do too.
We need to wrap it up, but
The big one.
I'm Dylan. We'll see you later.
You wanna find me, yo, I'm in the front row. My 2 tickets on me, I'm in the front row. The best place to be, I'm in the front row. So what's colder than ice and even hotter than a flame? I'll be in the front row, chilling at a